Let's welcome Karla Harris, amazing vocalist, recording artist, and teacher. We are really excited to have her on This Is Jazz. So, welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Hi, Quentin. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here with you.
Absolutely. So, I've been really enjoying diving into your music, and I'm impressed at the breadth and the mastery that you have over different styles because you've
Oh,
done a lot of your repertoire from the Great American Songbook, but it's not just straight ahead. You do straight ahead so well, but then you also incorporate Latin music, and then your project, Certain Elements, has other kind of
mm.
contemporary or smooth jazz elements in there. So I'm blown away. Can you just tell us kind of your musical background that led you to really pursue all these different areas of jazz?
Well, oh, sure. And thank you so much for that, for listening, first of all. Thanks for listening to the music and catching all of those things. Um, yeah, I grew up in the suburbs of St. Louis, in the late 70s, and my parents had a great, wonderful, and eclectic stack of albums.
Mm,
And I was one of those kids who, um, I'd wake up on Saturday morning and my dad would make pancakes and then we would go do our chores. And then after our chores, if I wasn't playing with my friend from across the street, I was listening to those albums. And those albums were all different styles of music. So there was jazz in there. There was pop, the pop of the time, which was people like Barbara Streisand. There was Leslie Uggams, there was soul. Aretha Franklin was in there. As far as jazz was concerned, there was instrumental and vocalist vocal jazz. There was Nancy Wilson and Billie Holiday and Ramsey Lewis and, along with Herb Albert, kind of the pop
mm,
jazz type thing. There were the Temptations. There was Friends of Distinction. You see,
right.
so I had this, and my background is kind of a melting pot. My ethnic
Mhm.
background and everything is a melting pot, and the album stack really reflected that, I think, in a lot of ways. So, my dad would sometimes have classic country playing in the
Mm,
mornings. Um, yeah, so I just grew up listening to a lot of different kinds of music and then being involved with choirs. I was singing, more classical things or, sacred music. And when I was in high school or junior high, I joined a garage rock band. And of course, as I was a teenager, I was into the 70s rock. I was listening to Fleetwood Mac and Heart and, and Styx and, just all of the Journey and
Yes.
all of those bands. And when I was in college, then I was asked to join a jazz ensemble
Mm,
that was doing arts outreach concerts
yeah.
in all of the schools in the St. Louis metropolitan area. So it was an introduction to jazz program that they were doing, and the singer in the group, they had a singer in the group, a very venerable. She was known as the First Lady of Jazz of St. Louis, and her name was Jeannie Trevor. And she was from Harlem originally, and she moved to St. Louis at some point, and was very much a part of the 50s and the 60s era of jazz in St. Louis. And she was my first mentor as a jazz vocalist, and she was wonderful. And so I started learning some of the standards, although they hired me because they wanted to have some more contemporary jazz. And Jeannie didn't want to sing that. She wanted to sing the straight ahead stuff. She didn't feel comfortable singing the contemporary stuff. So they brought me in to do like some Al Jarreau and
Oh,
things like that. So, and at the same time, I was also asked to join a function band where we were doing weddings and corporate. So I was singing all of I was doing the dinner set with the jazz stuff and then the dance set with all of the dance stuff of the 80s and the 90s. And I got tired and then I was in club bands and got tired of that and then went back to, decided I really, really missed the standards. I missed the music of
mhm,
jazz.
right.
And that's when I started to focus exclusively on that. But you never outgrow your roots.
Right.
Your roots are always with you. And so all of those influences from when I grew up, of course, stayed with me.
Mhm,
And there were a lot of great memories and a lot of fun, and I love the energy of it. And especially the energy of it. And when I later on when I moved to Portland, Oregon, I was with a Latin band headed by a very wonderful Latin percussionist by the name of Bobby Torres, who used
mhm,
to tour with Joe Cocker. And yeah, he toured with Joe Cocker and Tom Jones and Etta James. And that was like a master class in Latin jazz. And
Yeah.
so all of these things across all of these, decades and eras of my musical journey, you learn from one and you apply it to the other. You learn from that and you apply it to the one before. If you are smart, I think, if you are
Yeah.
wise,
Yeah.
you don't silo them.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And
So
I
that's
like
the short story. Yeah.
you're just immersing yourself in all of this music. That's incredible. When you first heard some of those vocal jazz albums, what attracted you to specific artists? Was it their singing tone? Was it their interpretation of the lyrics? Was it the arrangements? Kind of all the above? What like made Nancy Wilson stand out to you as Nancy Wilson?
Man, I love that question. The answer to it is, so I was a reader, all right? I
Mhm.
was a little girl who always had her nose in a book. And when I came home from school, that's what I wanted to do. Get a bologna sandwich and read Ramona the Pest or whatever the book was at the time. And so I was always attracted to words.
Mm.
They were, I'm a wordy. I like I get a word of the day and all of that kind of stuff. So I was really attracted to the stories of the lyrics, the
Yeah.
stories of the songs. I think that's the first thing that really caught my ear. The music that I liked the best were those that kind of had a real kind of thing to them as far as just lyrically a story. I would
Yeah.
I'd take my pen and or pencil and I would transcribe the
Oh,
lyrics. With the album, I would drop that needle up and down and try to get it right in the groove and write as much as I could remember, then try to find the exact same space and memorize the lyrics. So I think the thing that attracted me to Nancy Wilson and Barbra Streisand in particular, those two, and Billie Holiday,
mm.
although Billie was singing the standards, but I can remember, give me a pig's foot and a bottle of beer, and and I was probably 10 years old. I didn't know. I had no idea what a pig's foot was.
Oh my goodness.
but but it sounded kind of mysterious and everything, and
Mm.
Nancy's ability to deliver a lyric, she never considered herself a jazz singer. She said in interviews that she was a song stylist, and
Oh, wow.
she liked so she would sing any genre that as
Mhm.
long as she liked the song. That was her only prerequisite, was that she felt like singing it,
Yeah.
and she was a song stylist, so she was really just a wonderful storyteller in song. So that's what attracted me at first, and then
That's
I think the whole performance part of it became
Mhm.
part of the attraction. Yeah.
I hope you're enjoying the interview. I want to pause real quick to talk about This is Jazz and our books and courses. If you're a self-taught musician or a music teacher of any instrument, you're going to love my book, How to Teach Jazz and Improvisation. It's written in a way that's easy to understand, even if you don't have a jazz background. It gives you songs to play, ways to develop improvisation without fear of playing a wrong note, and lots more. It's available in print and ebook. And also, we have courses. So if you're a fan of jazz history, if you're a fan of jazz theory, you can find this and more at thisisjazz.com. All right, back to the interview. One thing that maybe vocalists don't get enough credit for is how many lyrics have to be in your head. Like at any time, like if someone says like, "Hey, can we do Lush Life or whatever tune?" It's like you've got to find that file and remember all of the verses and the choruses and all that. So.
It's really true. And it's always the bridge that you can't remember.
Right, right. Has learning lyrics been something that you've found has come naturally, or is it something that you really have had to put a lot of conscious effort in to get that skill up?
That's another good question, because as a teacher, it's interesting the students who struggle with memorization.
Mm.
Some people, I just they know this is I'm going to mess up the lyrics, Miss Karla. They just know that. So I think that the writing it down,
Mm.
that part of it, I think that having a physical component of memorizing is a really important thing, and I think that's one of the reasons why I got into a good habit of that from a little from a young age that we didn't have computers, we didn't have voice memos. We just had good old paper and a nice pen or a pencil, sharp
I'm
pencil.
all for it.
I'm all for it. I'm
Yes,
still into it. And this is got my, the calendar, Mr.
yes,
Calendar right here still.
absolutely.
So, yeah, but I think that because of that, I just got some really good habits for memorizing and a capacity to do it. Yes, there are, I don't even know how many songs are up here or pieces of songs are up
Mm.
here. It's a lot because it's annoying sometimes, somebody will say a phrase, especially if another musician says a phrase, and it'll make me want to just like sing that line from a song because it's
Yeah.
annoying.
Just mark it that little. You're like, wait, I got to finish this thought.
Right.
Where did that song go? Yeah. Um,
Right.
but
Right.
I think lyrics are so important. One of my professors, I mean, I'm a pianist, and he encouraged us. He said, like, you have to learn the lyrics because it's going to change the way you interpret the song. Like, if you
Yes.
take Day of Wine and Roses, it's a really happy sounding melody. It's got a great major key chord progression, but then you listen to the words and it's heartbreaking. So
Yes,
I feel
that's
like,
so true. And that's one of the things, you're the second pianist I've talked to recently who has said the same thing about an instructor. I work
mm,
with the great Tyrone Jackson
mm,
frequently. We teach together at Kennesaw. He was my co-producer on my most recent record, and we've worked together for several years. And Ellis Marsalis was his instructor, and he told him one time, sit down and play anything. Okay, I'll play Summertime when he was just starting with them, and he was like, Oscar Peterson type,
oh yeah,
and Ellis was like, hold up, time out. What are the
yeah.
lyrics? What's the story of this song?
Mm,
It's a lullaby.
mm.
So, which is not to say that in jazz, instrumentally, we can take all these interpretations and do what we want with them. But I think that as when you're working with a vocalist, I really
Mhm.
appreciate that you, as a player, take the time to learn what the stories of the songs, what the intent was by the composer.
Right, right. Like if you want to play Autumn Leaves in like a Bill Evans upbeat style, like that can be a choice, but it's good to know at least what
Yes.
that song was. That is a song of lament. It's not just always
Yeah.
supposed to be up. So that's
I
great.
completely agree. It's good to know. And when I started working with Ted Howe, who did the arranging and production on the my uh, David Iola Brubeck songbook album from
Mhm.
2015, he took a lot of interesting takes on some of those songs. So to your point, I think of In Your Own Sweet Way, the Brubeck
Right.
classic, which
Mhm.
is always played with that kind of, and even Dave himself played it with that kind of nice medium swing,
Yeah.
feels really cheerful. Well, Iola came and wrote lyrics to that song, which were not cheerful. They
Oh,
were melancholy.
interesting.
Now, nobody, rarely has that song been recorded vocally.
Mm.
The songbook itself, well, that's a whole other story. But if you want to hear about that, we'll get to it. But the songbook itself, is just not very well known lyrically.
Mm.
So when we interpreted that, and when Ted Howe went to, create an arrangement for it, it became something much different from that
Interesting.
mid-tempo,
Yeah,
happy swing tune.
that's
Yeah,
fascinating. That,
yeah.
that makes me wonder when you have one of your students learn a tune, um, are there kind of authoritative versions that you send them to? Like, for instance, you mentioned Billie Holiday. She has so much character and interpretation, but she so often veers from the original melody,
Yeah,
whereas someone like Ella Fitzgerald or even Frank Sinatra will sometimes hold the melody to the T. So
yeah,
do you give them a variety? What is
yes,
your process for teaching?
yes. Okay, so I want them to learn the melody as written by the composer,
Mm.
just
Mhm.
because for one thing, it's the right thing to do out of respect for the composer's work. That's
Mhm.
my philosophy. And secondly, it gives you the instrumentalist you're working with will appreciate that you know that melody because they're playing changes to try to go with what you're saying, right?
Right.
So, so yes, Ella is a good source. Somebody like Doris Day, who recorded a lot of standards, but was not, a jazz singer or whatever. She was a singer of the standards. So if you look to those people to kind of hear those old recordings, but you can get the melody that as it was written by the composer. And it's really interesting because I offer them up many different singers, including singers that are not well known. Because it's so important. People come into the program and they're like, okay, and I'll ask them, who are you familiar with? What jazz singers are you familiar with? And invariably, we get those top, Ella, Sarah, Nina, Billie. Those are probably the four that I hear more than anything, right? And those are, of course, classic, legendary, amazing contributors to the jazz legacy. But there's so many different voices out there. And so I have a list of like probably 90 singers that I want them to hear, just to hear that you don't have to sound like that. And you don't have to sound like her. You need to sound like you.
That's such a great point. I was at a gig recently, and a guy, in a way, kind of gently reminded me of that. Because a lot of the gigs, I'll bring in the jazz history to what I'm playing, and someone was like, "So do you do any Cedar Walton?" And it's like, "Oh, I don't do any Cedar Walton. Like he's not one of those main like top primary pianists we talk about." So that is super important. Yeah, it's not just Ella, Billie, Sarah, and Nina Simone. That's a great point.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about another thing that I was blown away in your recordings was your scatting ability. I think it was your first track on your most recent album had on Merge had What Is This Thing Called Love?
Yeah.
And this epic scatting solo. How do you, as an instrumentalist, I can teach someone the melodic language and stuff, but the syllables have always been mysterious to me. So can you kind of like move the veil or the curtain, and what is the difference between for syllables? Is it like just by feel? Is it kind of by listening a lot? Or I'll even just hand over the question to you now. How do you do syllables?
Well, first, let me tell you full disclosure, okay, on what is this thing called love. So there are solos, and that was originally a line written by Tyrone. And we were going to play it. We were going to do it together. It was going to be piano and voice together. And then I just took off on it one day, and it just became a vocal line. Okay, so it is a written line. Yeah. So okay, but that all that to say that it was just notes on a page. It was just notes on a page. So the scat syllables to put with it. You have consonants and you have vowels. And there are certain consonants that work well with certain styles of scat music, and certain consonants that work well with other styles. So you've got B, B, G, you've got G, you've got L, V, Z, but
Louis Armstrong was the only one that really did
you could go through. I could give you I could say, Quentin, come on, give me just use the just use but just go ba 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 ga la na, pa. If you just said ba ga da 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 ba, it's all, but it sounds, it's just, and it's the variety. I think the thing I work with the beginning singers is that they get stuck on just da 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 da, and they just stick on one syllable. So we have to work with the variety, and then sometimes we want to mix up, the vowels as well. So I, o, u, I, sometimes you don't want to even do a syllable. Sometimes you want to make a sound like a percussion, maybe we're doing some Latin stuff, and they're, I'm encouraging them to kind of work with the drummer on some percussion things. So it's really the idea of, so different singers. So Ella was very, of course, influenced by horn players. She was influenced by, Bird and Dizzy and Louis and many others. And So her scat style was very influenced by the sound that a horn makes.
Yeah.
Now, Anita O'Day, on the other hand, she lived with drummers, with a drummer. So she was very influenced by the more percussive, rhythmic elements
Oh, yeah.
of scat. So it's so interesting because people think that as a jazz vocalist, that means number one thing that you scat. And it's 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 really not.
Hmm.
I mean, Billie didn't scat.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
She did not scat. Nancy Wilson, I've heard maybe two recordings,
Yeah.
and they were really early on where
Yeah.
she did a little scatting. It's not a prerequisite. To me, and
Right.
what I tell my students, it's the ability to tell that story conversationally.
Hmm.
That is what makes that it's the phrasing. It's the phrasing that makes you a jazz vocalist.
Yeah, it's like what you said when you were quoting Nancy Wilson about like you're kind of entrusted with that song. Like, how are you stewarding that song and portraying that song and the lyrics and the story?
Hmm.
That. And that's fascinating about the drummer thing too. I was thinking of Gretchen Parlato, and she kind of did the percussive thing, and she's also I don't want to say influenced by Bobby McFerrin because I'm not sure about that, but she's done like the vocal where she like taps her chest and stuff. It's all really cool to see the growth and the changes.
Yeah, and all the different sounds that this
Mm.
little mechanism, this teeny tiny, I was just enthralled because I just went to my annual ENT appointment last week and I had him,
Oh.
he scopes me. And
Hmm.
this time I had him go ahead and video the scope so I could take it with me and I could show my students. I was watching it on the screen while he was doing it.
Yeah.
And really, Quentin, I mean, it's these two little folds of skin, of tissue and
Yeah.
tiny little tendons. And it's the air coming up and vibrating those.
Yeah.
And then all of this, I mean, opera singers and, Bobby McFerrin, and, with the use of technology, a
Yeah.
microphone and all that can add beatboxers, whatever. And it's all this little bitty tiny thing in here. It's
Crazy.
amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, in the sound that you can reach too, you mentioned earlier that you did some sacred music. I was just thinking of there's this preacher named Charles Spurgeon, and this was before amplified voice, and he would talk to
Yes.
like 10,000 people.
Yeah.
Like, how does one voice carry? Like, yeah, it's
Yeah. Well, and that's when they started figuring out acoustical science, right? And
yeah,
acoustical design and everything too, when
yeah,
they were the theaters. Now, sometimes I get to perform in old theaters that have been restored.
right,
And of course, the acoustics for that are much different than the acoustics
mm,
for amplified music
right.
now. So yeah, it's interesting.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You brought up the theaters, and I think that's a great pivot because I want to talk about the venues that you do play. I was reading through your bio and your calendar and amazed at how many festivals you do. You're like you've locked down the festival circuit. So I just wanted to ask yeah, that's incredible.
Thank
Is
you.
festivals one of your favorite types of performance styles? Is there something unique about a festival, either outdoors or in? Do you also like the intimate jazz clubs and listening rooms? Can you just shed some light on that?
Yeah. There's something that to like about each thing,
Hmm.
but I do enjoy outdoor. I think that's fun. The sound outdoors and the kind of like party vibe of an outdoor the casual kind of outdoor thing is nice, and it is nice to even though it's been really hot and
Hmm.
the voice loves humidity,
Hmm.
so being outside and singing in a humid environment often feels just really good vocally,
Cool.
as opposed to being in a theater where they have to keep it cool and the humidity low because of the beautiful grand piano that's in there that has to be kept at a certain temperature controlled environment, but that dry environment can be very challenging for a vocalist. So because it's things get dry, so that can be a challenge. But I love the small club settings too because this style of music in particular, and I'm not like if you've got somebody like a Gregory Porter who's got this huge big voice and everything. that is great at large venues. But the club environment, you can tell the stories, and I feel like not to get woo woo here, but I feel like the vibrational aspects of what happens with sound waves and music and everything, and the energetic aspects of it is more readily felt in in an intimate environment, and the energy that you get back
Yes.
from the crowd. And I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I
Yeah.
love listening rooms. There's just something about the crowds too. It's like they're going there with the intent to listen, with the intent to be a part of the concert experience. And I know
Yeah.
for my trio, we just always seem to, I don't know, there's like some magical element about playing to a small, intimate kind of listening room style audience that I just love. I love it so much.
And don't you find that this style of music, I mean, if you're playing the standards and digging into that Great American Songbook and doing interpretations of it, don't you find that this style of music really is meant to be heard in
Mm,
that small setting? I mean, that's where it was born.
yeah,
That's where this style of music was born,
yeah,
in
absolutely.
small groups.
Yeah, and you just I think that you feed off of the audience's energy, and just the groundwork for improvisation is so like fertile, and just it just works so well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed.
For any kind of rising artist that is interested in festivals, do you have any advice for them? Because I feel like sometimes the festival seems like it's either you have to know somebody or you just cold call and cross your fingers. Do you have any advice for any rising artists?
I think to get into the festivals, you have to have some kind of a track record,
Mm,
which, which is can be hard, because how do you get a track record? But your track record doesn't have to be in the festival environment. And I think networking is really
mm,
important. So I will say that it doesn't matter how long you've been doing this, but for a young or emerging artist, the networking is really important, and go out to those places, network with the musicians who are involved with them, network with the organizers of
mm,
the festivals, which I know artists are artists, and it's not always easy for us
mhm,
to, do that kind of this schmooze thing. Some people love it,
mhm.
and some people are just like, can I just play? Do
Yeah.
I have to do the schmooze thing? But it's important to do the networking, and if you can kind of get that foundationally, just have faith that that will continue to grow.
Mhm,
That those contacts will continue to be built, and somebody will, if you let it be known that you want to do that, that you want to be involved in that,
mhm,
especially if you're playing as a side person. you
mm,
know for me, as somebody who's like the headline, who's the leader of the band, I should say, the leader of the band, a track record of recordings that have you know
mhm,
done well, done something, gotten good radio play,
mhm.
have if you have a track record of being in smaller clubs, and you are doing a good job of getting people in the clubs for your shows, all of that helps. All of that helps. But it really is a networking thing, and it is a lot. I think it is a lot, kind of, getting in there, and who
Yeah. That's
like
such
everything.
Yeah, but that's such a great point, and I feel like I know I had to learn that lesson the hard way, and I feel like many rising artists or artists that are in college right now, there's kind of this belief that if the music is good enough, everything else will fall into place. And I know, like for me, I was like, oh, networking, that's for like business majors or that's for
Yeah.
comm majors. I don't need network. I just need to practice. And then, you're in professional music for 5 years and you're realizing, wow, I need to network. And then you're going your 10 years and you're like, man, everything I have is because I networked,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. The people who I know who are doing a lot,
Hmm.
okay, the people I know who are doing a lot, and I see them going on to like the next plateau, are
Hmm.
serious. They're out there with a tremendous amount of energy,
Hmm.
networking and talking to people and offering to do things, and and also diversifying, Quentin,
Yeah.
diversifying, not just playing music or just playing one style of music,
Hmm.
or if they're playing one style of music, they are also involved with, writing scores,
Yeah.
working in the film industry or whatever, or teaching, or um, helping with the local, music festival over here as a volunteer.
Mhm.
They're diversifying,
Yeah.
and that just builds your network too.
Yeah. That's
You
such a good
you can't. I don't think you can do just one thing. I just
no.
yeah. Not
No.
now. Not anymore.
Yeah. Music
Some
industry
people.
is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't,
Yeah.
it's impossible. But I think we get a lot out of diversifying too. Like I think it has its challenges, but it's definitely beneficial.
Yeah.
So you just released Merge, is that right? Did that just come
Yes.
out?
Yeah.
Awesome.
That was released in early July. Uh huh. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yay.
Yeah, man, well done.
Thank you.
There's so much that goes into making an album.
Yeah.
So I guess yeah, the last thing I want to talk about that album. Want to talk about where it's on all streaming, so everybody that watches can go find it. It has a nice balance of Great American Songbook and other tunes, and you mentioned an arranger. Do you arrange each tune? Do you work with an arranger? What is the process of making an album for you?
No, well, okay. So each album has been different for
Okay.
me. So this is my fifth one, and each one has been different. So you grow into this thing. Also, everybody who, young musicians, just know that you don't. Okay, I will never make a blanket statement because there are people who know, boom, and they're in there like, they've been doing it for 30 years, whatever. But this is a learning process, and it can be an expensive learning process
Yes.
if you don't have good guidance. Okay.
Mm.
So let me just say this didn't start how I'm getting ready to describe how I did Merge was not how I did my first album. My first album was very much I was led. Somebody said Tom Kennedy wanted to produce the album and do the arrangements, and I went into the booth and I did
Hmm.
what he directed, and it was a very good experience, learning experience that way. Okay, so for this one, for Merge, I worked with Tyrone, so the pianist, and also he's a composer and an arranger. I told him I woke up one morning. I know I want to do this record. I knew the concept, and I knew I just woke up one morning. I'm like, this is what I'm doing this year. It's going to happen. So we started work on it right away. I knew that I wanted it to be a merging of the musical styles that I came up with. So everything we talked about in the beginning
Yeah.
of this, our meeting today here. And I picked out several R&B classics,
Hmm.
and also had some things that I'd been doing with Tyrone for a while,
Hmm.
and some things we had arranged for my live shows in the past. And I said, here, I think these are good ones to start with. And the things that we hadn't already arranged, we sat down and just we started trying some things, and we let the music lead.
Mm.
Okay, this is what I mean by that. Because people have said, when you take on a song like For the Love of You, the
Hmm.
Isley Brothers, which has been covered many, many times, what's the point of doing it again? What's the point of doing it again in a different way? It's iconic. Everything about it is iconic. Well, the point of it is that this was my album and I loved the song and I liked doing the song.
Yeah.
And I wanted to find a way, I wanted to approach it in a way that felt good to me,
Hmm.
which is a very time-honored jazz tradition.
Yeah.
What does your life bring to this song that you're interpreting now? You're allowed to. You're allowed to bring your life, and you're allowed to bring your day, and you're
Yeah.
allowed to bring your hopes or your feels or whatever to it
Yeah.
in that moment.
Yeah.
So, we ours is kind of a Latin odd meter approach. We do it in seven and then we break into a samba. But that's what we did with each song. And there are a few originals on there as well. And those were a couple of them are just, what I wrote, and then one of them is a co-writing with Tyrone. But we did sessions like every other week for, the first half of 2024,
Hmm.
and just working on what do we want this music to sound like, and what do we want it to say, and how do we want it to feel. It had to kind of have that still acoustic
Hmm.
thing that is jazz.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit reads a little contemporary on a lot of the arrangements, but not in the smooth jazz vein. Just kind of like a fusion, contemporary, fusion vein. Hopefully
Yeah.
not confusion. There were times I felt confused. um,
Great.
but I think it all works together well. And then some of the things we just approached in a very, I don't know, organic, lovely way that felt true to me.
That's awesome. I love that. What? So, did you record it in a studio or a home studio? What was the that process like?
Yeah, we went down so I recorded certain elements, which was the 2019 release, at a studio here in town run by Trammell Starks. He's the award-winning recording engineer.
Hmm.
And he closed that studio last year because he was hired by Auburn University in Auburn, Alabama,
Yeah.
to build out this amazing space that they had for a recording studio, and to run their new recording engineering program. So when he got down there and he was building out this space, he called me and he said, "Hey, why don't you come down and do your next project here?"
Whoa.
So he said, I want to get this place broken in, and get the word out, and this will help us do both. So that's where we went. It's about a 2 hour drive for me, but we
Hmm.
went down and we recorded um, 14 tracks
Yeah, it's a big
in
album.
2 days. Thank you. Which we benched one of the tracks, not because anything was wrong with it. It
Yeah.
was just like we were in there and we were mixing, and we were having some issues. And I said, you know what, this one's not mission critical. So
Yeah.
let's bench this one, and that happens. So, but yeah, we did. And I had two rhythm sections. So Tyrone was across the board, but we had two bassists and two drummers. One group came in the first day, one group came in the second day, and we did all of those over 2 days, and then we recorded the horns at a later time.
That's incredible. And
Yeah, it was super.
was this like studio musicians where like this was their first time playing with you kind of thing where it's like, all right, I Dropboxed you the charts. We're gonna in the studio.
No, no,
Good.
no. These are my buddies. These are my colleagues. These are people who do live shows with me. Everybody on here I've worked with live at some
That's
point or another, and everybody, the rhythm section is, I've done multiple shows with both of those rhythm sections,
yeah,
and the horn players. These are people that I greet with a hug,
that's awesome.
um, and I love that. I love that. Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah.
What is the post recording process like? Do you in the mixing process, do you like have an engineer that you trust and you kind of give them a general idea, or is this kind of like a nitty gritty? You're kind of in the trenches, tweak that, tweak this kind of thing.
Well, Trammell he mixed it. He's the recording engineer and the mixing engineer, and he's worked with my voice on that prior project, so I trust him. And but you kind of have to be in the studio. It's not the kind of thing where I could say, or he didn't want me. He wanted us in the studio. He wanted me or Tyrone or both of us in the studio. Um, so it's a very tedious. The mixing portion of it, as you I'm sure know, is a very tedious, long days, crazy, like peanut M&Ms, coffee and peanut M&Ms.
I'm gonna have to do that in my next mixing session. Now I know the secret. It's
You
peanut
know,
M&M.
you go into it saying, "Hell, I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to eat healthy all day today." And then 3 o'clock rolls around, and you're like, "Where's the vending machine?"
That's right.
um,
That's
but yes,
love it.
it was, and it's a several days process to mix.
Yeah.
So, but you know, you have to do it, and you have to listen to it on multiple devices, through multiple speakers, and the sound that we wanted to go for, we knew the sound that we wanted to capture, and you know, that's what we worked for, and that's what we got.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, it was a huge success. It's a pleasure to listen to. Everybody needs to go listen to it. And your other stuff. You have other stuff too, but
Thank you.
with Joe Alterman Trio, yeah, excellent stuff.
Yeah.
Where can listeners find you, find your music? Do you have social media? Do you have anything that you want to plug or drop or mention?
Yes, please just go to karlaharris.com, and it's Karla with a K. And I keep that very up to date, and it has my socials, my links on there, and it has my schedule, and it has my music on there, and ways to listen to it, and you know, purchase, or all the latest news, you know, how we're doing with things and all that good stuff. So karlaharris.com. But I'm on all the streaming platforms. I mean, you can listen to Merge on all of the, you know, sound, all of the things, Spotify and Apple Music and Amazon Music and everything. So
The lists just keep getting longer.
it keeps getting longer, doesn't it, Quentin?
Uh,
Yeah.
well, that's great. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure to talk with you, and yeah, thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it.